I hate when people use the limitations of the past or modernity to try to make an absolute claim on whether or not something is possible. Like I hate when people take and use the phrase, oh, that's the way things have always been. That's just the way things are, as a way to rationalize why things can't be better or why things can't progress. You know, that's a load of bullshit. They'll say things like, my great-grandfather worked for massa from sun up to sundown to the day he died, and he didn't complain. Well, he's a jackass. You know, take it like a man. Like, aggrandizing struggle. Like, what do you get out of that? What? Take it like a man. Yeah, you gotta do that like a man. A real man. Like, you ever notice the more manly way of doing things? The manlier way of doing things is always the more inefficient and dangerous way of doing that thing. Like, what? Like, oh, you know, oh, don't wear no helmet like a pussy. You know, these pussies, like, as if wearing proper protective equipment isn't cool, or, you know, isn't efficient, doesn't suit its purpose, doesn't serve a function. Like, what is the MO here? What is the MO? What is your modus operandi? To look cool, to be tough? You know, I don't get it. It's like you're trying to overcompensate for some sort of insecurity or something. You want to do the thing that's less efficient and more dangerous. For what reason? I don't get it. You know, I'm sick of hearing these motherfuckers, you know, glorify, romanticize the olden days. Yeah, the olden days. Back in my day. I don't give a fuck about back in your day. You know, the world was a worse place in every way. You know, every measurable way. It's pretty interesting. Things get better. But when you ask a person from back in the day, an old person, they talk about shit like it was just way better in every way, when it's the exact opposite. You know, you hear these motherfuckers, let's take basketball for example, you know. Oh, you know, these kids nowadays, you know, they don't know how to play, man. They don't know how to play. You know, back in my day, you know, you post up, you get the ball, you put your back into them, and you throw them balls, and you bang in the paint. You post up, you turn around, drop, step, jump, hook, and you take them balls to the face like a real man. You take them balls to the face like a real man. That's what you do. These kids nowadays, they scared to go bang in the paint. They scared to go take a clothesline in midair, you know, try to get a 2-point basket instead of standing on the outside and shooting a 3-point basket, which is more points in a more efficient manner. But, you know, that's besides the point, you know, because I'm tough, I'm real, you know, I'm a real tough guy, you know, from back in the day, you know, old school, you know, banging the post, you know. Like, what? You know, these kids, you know, they scared to, you know, they shooting threes, you know, high arcing layups, you know, scared to take that physical contact, you know, because I'm a real man. Come on, man. Get the fuck out of here with that shit, man. It was 1962. I remember. Never forget it. I never forget it. It was 1962. And Sweet Pea Jenkins, man, he'd come down the court dribbling, man. We didn't have all that hippity-hoppity, skippity-scoppity bullshit, man. He'd go in the paint, take the contact, and lay it up with the finger roll, baby. You know, we had the good fundamentals, you know, posting up, playing good defense, you know, fundamentals. You know, you hear people telling kids, you know, you hear people telling kids that type of stuff, man. But what I want to know is, did he hit the league? You know, did he hit the league? Well, he blew out his knee. Yeah, that's what he blew out his knee. You know, he almost made it, man. I swear, man. I swear he almost made it, man. He blew out his knee, man. That ball was cold, boy. I swear to God, that ball was raw, man. Y'all cheering nowadays. Y'all don't know, man. I don't know shit, man. Bullshit. Y'all don't know a goddamn thing, man. That ball, man. If you wouldn't have blew out that fucking knee, man. Yeah, that's all I want to know. Did the motherfucker make the league? That's what it comes down to. You know, and take that and extrapolate that to everything in life. Did he make the fucking league? Because if not, I don't really give. When it comes to achieving a goal, you want empirical evidence. Otherwise, you're just wishful thinking. You're taking a conclusion that you have a bias towards, and you're cherry picking the evidence to fit your narrative. So, you know, it doesn't matter whether or not, you know, you have a personal affinity towards a certain thing. Does it have evidence to support the claim? Does the claim have evidence, empirical evidence? So that's why I say it doesn't matter, you know, fuck all this hippity-hoppity, skippity-scoppity, fundamentals, back to the basket, go in the paint and take a bowl. Did he hit the league? No, it's all about the effectiveness, the measured, researched, experimented, repeatedly tested evidence is how we discover how something or if something works. It's not, well, my grandpa did it, his grandpa did it, that's why I'm doing it. God damn it. You know, it's like people buy holes, not drills. People buy holes, not drills. You know, people, they get so caught up in like romanticizing the method, or, you know, romanticizing the work that it takes to get to a goal, so much to the point where they're sacrificing, or they may be sacrificing, the effectiveness of the said goal. You know, they may not even be reaching that goal to their fullest capability because they're so caught up on how the process looks. You know, oh, you know, the process of, you know, you wake up at 4:30 in the morning and you drink a glass of raw eggs and you hit the pavement, you pound the pavement and all this other bullshit. And it's like, what evidence do you have to support the fact that that even works or not? You know, what evidence do you have to support that claim? You know, it's like this bullshito, you know, this bullshit mystical martial arts horse shit. Ooh, I will touch you in your pressure points, and with mystical chi, I will touch you on your forehead, and on the count of 3, you will drop. And you see those, a so-called master at that bullshito fight against a, you know, run-of-the-mill MMA guy, you know, a guy that's trained to kick ass, you know, a guy that's trained to kill you with his bare limbs without a weapon. You know, trained to kill you. You know, the ref has to stop the guy because he's trained to keep fighting till that ref pulls him off of him, right? And you see the MMA guy versus the Bushido master, when it actually happens, because, you know, most of them, you know, they know it's bullshit. They're just trying to scam people. But when it happens, the rare times that it does happen, you see the MMA guy just completely obliterate the Bushido master. Because, duh! Like, what do you expect? This guy is trained with empirical methods to get him to actually fight against a live opponent. Versus this other guy, it's just pulling shit out of his ass and trying to mimic shit that he's seen on a 70s cheesy kung fu movie. Like, what? Of course this guy is going to win. I just extrapolate that to everything. Doesn't matter, you know, if it looks cool, if it seems cool and mystical and, you know, ambiguous. That's not a thing. That's not empirical. That has no bearing on whether or not the thing is effective towards achieving said goal. Generic salesman here. I'm here with the Drill Max 5000. You know, it's big, it's shiny, it has titanium rods and pins and needles and shit like that, and you know, you put it and tickles your balls and gives you a foot massage, and you know, it does a lot of things. Look, man, I don't want to hear all that bullshit, man. Does it put a hole in my wall? Does it give me the result that I'm looking for? You know, I don't give a damn what the damn drill looks like, you know, how many volts it uses, what type of technique. I don't give a fuck about any of that shit. Does it put a hole in my wall? That's all I need, man. That's all I'm looking for. People buy holes, not drills. That damn simple. You know, it's like people assume facts not based in evidence, right? That brings me to a point. I think a lot of people misunderstand what science is. You know, science isn't a doctrine. It's not a dogma. You know, science doesn't make proclamations of truth. You know, it simply takes data, it takes evidence that's repeatedly tested and tries to create models that most accurately depict reality. You know, it forms tentative conclusions that are subject to change. It doesn't say, this is the doctrine of science. These are the proclamations of truth. It doesn't do that. It just explains phenomena in reality. So, you know, people say things like, science doesn't know everything. It never claimed to know anything, to know everything. Science doesn't, so you say science doesn't know everything. First of all, it never claimed to know everything, but even so, there's no problem with secular methods, secular moral systems that is in any way solved by appealing to religion or a deity. So, thing about it is, at least science is a method. You know, when you appeal to a religious doctrine, that's just a pronouncement. That's just an assertion. That's just a bald fucking assertion. You know, science attempts to understand something to the point where it's beyond a reasonable doubt that this thing is the way it is. You know, that's why they say, oh, we have it down to a science, because that's what science does. people want a catchy, snappy, jazzy way of explaining something. They want it tightly packed with a ribbon wrapped around it. But you see, that's when like pop science comes in, trying to take, simplifying a complex topic, right? But that's not what science attempts to do. Science attempts to actually explain the thing for what it is, right? Explain the phenomena as accurately as possible. Which brings me to a point. People have a misunderstanding of what science is. The reason why we know the things that we know is because of science. It doesn't matter how mundane it is. We can only rationally claim that we know the thing if it has evidence that is scientifically based. When somebody explains something in a scientific fashion, your people like, oh, that's science, he's science, he's a scientist, he's science, that universe shit, that's that universe shit. You think he better than me? You think he better than me? You think he better than me? What? That science. I don't understand. You have people. Like, science isn't just something that you just get to pull out when you want to seem smart, or when you want to, I don't even know, like, I don't know what people's perception of science is, but I know, that most people's, from the way they explain, the way they view science seems from a place where there's some lack of understanding at some point. How, the way when you put that ground coffee into your coffee maker this morning, that's science. When you flick that light switch on, that's science. When you got in your car and you put the key in the ignition, or you push start it, that's science. The generators that send electricity to your home, to your house, or the solar panels, that was built using science. They couldn't take that on faith. That's interesting. Every time it's some mundane thing. How do you do that? Well, you just do that, and you do that. It does that. Duh. But when it's something that makes them uncomfortable, or, it makes me feel uneasy, it's cognitive dissonance. So it the conclusion is unsatisfactory to me personally. Well, let's take it on faith. I'm going to take it on faith. What? Taking something on faith. So what is faith? Let's get down to it. I like to pinpoint what it is that we're trying to discuss. So let's get down to it, man. Let's get down to this shit. So, what is faith? It seems to me, I don't know, I could be wrong. Yes, I could be wrong. I acknowledge that. I could be wrong. But what it seems to me like, faith is the excuse you give for when you don't have evidence for something. It seems like faith is the excuse that you give when you lack evidence for something. What is faith? To me, faith is indistinguishable from gullibility. Think about it. Faith. Hey, man, I got a fucking I got a pet dragon that shoots fire, it breathes fire, and I flew here to your house, riding that dragon. It's invisible though, but it's real. It's definitely real. It definitely exists. And you take that on faith. Aren't you just gullible? I don't help me out here. Like, aren't you just gullible? Like, how is try to distinguish taking an unsubstantiated claim on faith and gullibility. So it seems to me that faith is just something that you give when you don't have evidence, because if you had evidence, you'd just give that. Like, I never heard a situation where there is a clear, concise explanation for something that's universally understood by many. By most people, it's universally understood that faith is the given explanation for that thing. I never seen that. I don't understand. How, the water cycle, or, how electricity works, or, the law of thermodynamics, gravity. I don't really hear people say, we take it by faith on those things. But when it's some, omnipotent guy with a beard in a nightgown in the sky that watches everything, let's take it on faith. Some deity in the sky that, you gotta, he cares about your sexual orientation, and, you gotta worship him, and, eternal torment, whatever the fuck, burn in hell for eternity, whatever the fuck the bullshit is. I don't give a shit. I don't really too much care about unsubstantiated claims. I'm just using that as an example. Hey, I wonder how that thing is. Well, actually, if you just break it down logically, the thing is, what? You got a science shit. What you talking about that science shit? Science. You're a scientist. Oh, that science. You think you better than me. You know that science universe shit. No, I'm just simply trying to explain how this thing, science shit. Yeah, science. Limiting whenever you try to rationalize current and past limitations. Like, instead of saying we can't do something because that's just the way that it is, or that's the way God made things, or something stupid like that. Like, just admit that the reason that we can't do something is because we're just not good enough, or we don't know enough. Fall into the mistake of thinking that just because we don't know something now, or we can't do something now, that it is unknowable or impossible. That's a fallacy. The fact that merely we can't do something currently, that doesn't mean or have any bearing on whether or not it can be done in the future, or couldn't be done in the past, for that matter. And then the thing about it is, whenever you have people with this defeatist mindset where they rationalize limitations, they make cultures out of our limitations, and they make things like conventional wisdom that says you can't do that, or if you do this you can't do that, or you do this you get this result, and it's not actually based in evidence. And that's not a path to understanding. Path to understanding and believing as many true things and as few false things as possible is to admit when you're wrong and keep constantly applying scrutiny to your beliefs. Question your preconceived notions. Have a high standard of evidence for all claims. Question everything. For example, during the invention of the automobile, people looked at it as the horseless carriage. And what I'm saying is, don't look at it as the horseless carriage, because that's limiting, right? You have people questioning, well, what about the horses? What about the jobs for the horses? How we're going to use the horses, you know? And that's a limiting thought process. So don't think about it in the terms of what it has historically been. What are the historical limitations of said concept? Think about it for what it is, what the function that we intend to use it with. We intend to use the automobile as a transportation mechanism, not to enslave horses to transport humans. Like, that's not the goal. You know, that was part of the equation, but not due to some inherent property. That was just the reality of our limitations with transportation technology. So once you get that dogma out of our thinking and our decision making and problem solving methods, then we can actually get to the bottom of it, of what we're trying to do in the inquiry, rather than the utility, right? Now we can advance the concept that we're actually trying to get towards. We're actually trying to, you know, make transportation better. We're trying to make everything better. But we can't do that if we're stuck with dogma. You know, inquiry versus utility. Though in a capitalist society, we tend to prioritize the utility of capitalists and the utility of perpetuating commerce and making money over scientific inquiry, you know, and, you know, epistemology and the actual knowing of concepts. Like, there's this thing called Chesterton's fence. Chesterton's fence is basically this philosophical quandary where there's this fence in the city, and there's one guy that's like, well, let's just bulldoze this fence down so we can build a highway so we can transport goods or something like that. And there's this other guy that's basically saying, but shouldn't we find out why this fence was put there? You know, what's the reason for this fence? How did it become erected there? You know, erection, you know, dick joke. But, you know, what's the point of this fence? Why is it there? There's these two sides of this philosophical coin. And I just feel like, you know, inquiry, I feel like we don't prioritize inquiry enough. We prioritize utility, and utility for commerce, you know? Like, who gives a shit? Like, the trading of goods and services, like, how far does that get you? You know, actually knowing something, you know, you can formulate methods of problem solving if you actually know the concept on a fundamental level. I don't know. Trying to solve a problem, you break it down. Does this serve its function? Does this serve its intended purpose in an efficient way? If it checks the boxes, then you're good. You know, in society, like a lot of people, they criticize methods of doing things because, oh, you look like a sissy when you do that, when you do it like that. Well, it serves its intended purpose, so I don't care. You know, it's like this bizarre fascination and fixation on exerting or displaying machismo. You know, trying to be a tough guy, trying to look like a tough guy. It's like, who gives a shit? Like, who's keeping score of who's the toughest guy to ever exist? Right? It's like, I don't know. It's like, for example, you're drinking coffee. You know, for some, you know, you may like the flavor of coffee. For others, it's just a delivery mechanism for caffeine. And it's like when people add sugar and cream to it, oh, you're a wimp, you're a sissy, you can't handle black coffee, you're a bitch, you're a pussy, you're a soy boy, you wimp, you wuss. And so it's like, what's the point of that? You know, there's this scene from Pulp Fiction where this hitman, you know, tough guy, you know, stereotypically tough guy, and they ask him, how does he like his coffee? And he subverts the trope of the stereotypical tough guy drinking his coffee black, and he's like, lot of cream, lot of sugar. How do you like your coffee? Lot of cream, lot of sugar. So I would say take that concept and extrapolate it to everything. How do I like my coffee? Lot of cream, lot of sugar. You know, no shit, makes it taste better. You know, it's like, why deprive yourself of pleasure? It serves no purpose unless you're just a masochist. By all means, go ahead and do you, you know. Different strokes for different folks. Whatever floats your boat. But if you're just trying to solve a problem or achieve a goal in the most efficient way, you know, just do the most efficient method. It's not really that difficult, not really that hard of a concept to grasp. A lot of cream, a lot of sugar. No shit. There's also this concept of, like, you know, your grandma, you know, baking a cake or baking cookies or cooking something. And you're like, what's the recipe, Grandma? She's like, I don't use no recipe. I just do it by ear. I just do it from the heart. And you wonder why it tastes different every single time. You have an inconsistent product because, you know, contrary to popular belief, cooking is a science. You know, you can break it down fundamentally. You know, what this ingredient needs to be heated to this temperature for this amount of time for this result to happen. You know, if you just throw random shit in there, how you feel at that particular time, then you're going to have an inconsistent result. You know, that's just anti-science, right? So it's like people, you know, you cooking a recipe and you're measuring everything. Oh, why you measuring stuff? You know, why you measuring stuff? Yeah, that's some dumb stuff. Yeah, just do it from the heart like Grandma used to do it. It's like, no, you jackass. I want this result, so I'm going to follow the recipe. Do it the exact way the recipe says. That's how you get the result, man. It's that damn simple, man. Yeah. You know, there's these guys that, you know, yeah, I'm a tough, blue collar, bring my lunch pail to work, tough guy, you know. I'm a man, a manly man, masculinity. You know, his car's broke down. He's getting under the hood. He's jacking it up, getting underneath the car. He's working on the car and this hot oil is just dripping into his face, into his hands. And then he's like, you walk up to him, he's like, you're like, hey man, why don't you just take it to a mechanic, you know, take it to a shop, you know, get the oil change, bro. It's like $12. And he's like, you think you're better than me. It's like, no, that's just a more efficient way to solve the problem. You know, it's like, if you're doing that because that's your only options, you know, that's fine. But if you're doing it to be a tough guy and uphold traditional standards of masculinity, then that's just stupid. The guy who's shooting 3-pointers instead of contested 2s and long 2s. It's like, he doesn't think that he's better than you. He is better than you because his way of doing things is more efficient.